Okay, it is 7 p.m. and we will resume our Monday, December 6th Dublin City Council meeting. For this evening, Mr. Peterson, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a presentation this evening. Janet Cooper is with us on behalf of the Dublin Arts Council. So please, Janet, welcome. We're so glad that you're here and look forward to your update.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you. To provide an update from Dublin Arts Council during this last meeting.
Hey, Janet, could I ask you to press your little button until your green light comes on?
I thought it was on.
Thank
Here
you.
we go. I see this one. Thank you very much. I was thanking you all and for the opportunity. Well, good. Well, then please let me start again with Mayor Ambrose Grooms, members of council, city staff, residents and guests. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update from Dublin Arts Council during this last meeting. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Janet Cooper. I'm the Director of Engagement for Dublin Arts Council. Executive Director David Guillaume is out of state and is unable to join us tonight. But on his behalf and from the entire board and staff, we thank you for your support of Dublin Arts Council and for Dublin as a creative and innovative community. I'd like to begin with an update on a very important Dublin Art and Public Places project, our Public Art Commission in the ML Red Tribune Nature Reserve. Our selection committee, as we call them, jurors, there are 8 of them who are going to help us select our next public artwork. And I'd like to just let you know a little bit about who they are and thank them for their hard work thus far. We have Kristen Helmick-Brunet, a curatorial associate at the Wexner Center for the Arts, Dr. Nia Dadich, a local visual and folk artist, Mary Gray, retired Ohio Arts Council Rife Gallery Director. We have Dr. David Guillaume, who is our executive director, but is also adjunct associate professor in the Department of Arts Administration, Education, and Policy at The Ohio State University. Adding to our jury is Michael Hyatt, a landscape architect with City of Dublin's Parks Department. And for those who don't know, he also has an art and technology background. Dr. Joan Krause, who is a Dublin Arts Council board member and a counselor at Columbus Public Schools Arts Impact Middle School. Shar Norman, an emeritus dean of faculty at Columbus College of Art and Design, a local artist specializing in fiber, sculpture, and papermaking. And Barbara Ray, who you may also know, nature education coordinator for City of Dublin. These 8 jurors reviewed materials from 151 applicants for this project, representing 23 states. In addition to the qualifications and their public artwork examples, each artist submitted a statement about community engagement as part of their application, which we took into very serious consideration for this. The jurors have done a fantastic job, and the 3 finalists are Elon Overbook, a public artist based in Long Island City, New York, whose artwork is featured in public spaces and collections in the United States, Canada, Israel, India, and Europe. His large-scale artworks often include recycled materials. He's been selected for 9 major public commissions within the last 5 years. Second is Adam Kuby, based in Portland, Oregon. He embraces community voices in his process. His artworks are collaboration with built and natural world, fostering a sense of connectedness in an increasingly fractured environment. Kuby has been selected for 9 major public art commissions in the last 5 years. Studio KCA of Brooklyn, New York, our 3rd finalist, is led by Jason Klamoski and Leslie Chang. They use material, light, and form to tell a story about the intersections of nature, conservation, science, and technology, reflecting the heart of the community in public spaces. Studio KCA has been selected for 12 major public art commissions within the last 5 years. These really noteworthy artists joined us in Dublin on November 19th this year, so you will see them above in that photo, meeting with Dublin Arts Council and city staff and the jurors. This included an extensive site visit at ML Red Traeview Nature Reserve, the site selected for this next public artwork. So the next steps, the artists are currently creating their site-specific proposals. This is where we'll see what they really think and would like to bring to our community. They're going to return to Dublin on January 21st. They're going to present their proposals to the jury and to the community in these chambers. So information about that is coming out very, very soon. The jury will convene immediately after that presentation. And then the following Monday, January 24th, they're going to bring their recommendation to council and request authorization for city staff to enter into a contract with the artist. The estimated completion date for this new public artwork will be with a dedication in summer of 2023. Okay, we currently have 16 river boxes in our collection, in our public art collection. That's where geocaching meets public art. We also have 3 fractal boxes, which are seen here, encouraging us to discover repeating patterns in nature and experience their stress-relieving effect. We have 6 art boxes. Those are distribution points throughout Dublin for grab-and-go art activities and materials similar to the Little Libraries concept. We call these vessels, which are accessible throughout the community, on demand and free of charge, Art on Demand. Dublin Arts Council has recently launched an intensified public art stewards program to support this art on demand. Note the use of steward versus volunteer. This reflects our shared commitment to caretaking of these community resources. 75 new stewards responded to an invitation to adopt one of these boxes and joined us for an orientation event on October 26th, so very recently. They are currently hard at work out in the field and in our building creating the materials for these vessels, sporting their tie-dyed shirts, and we're showing the creation of the tie-dyed shirts here on this particular slide. I would like to thank you all in advance for your consideration later tonight as you review the hotel motel tax grants via the Finance Committee's recommendation. This is for a project called River Box Bridge, and it has 2 primary areas of focus. One is the creation of the first artist-created geocoin. I'm going to show you all a sneak peek in the next slide. And the second is the creation of 2 new river boxes in the downtown Dublin area, celebrating the bridging of both historic and new, and promoting local business development. A note about cultural tourism, which is a key element of this project. In a report earlier this year, UNESCO revealed that tourism centered on cultural attractions is one of the fastest growing segments of the tourism industry, accounting for an estimated 40% of all tourism worldwide. The Americans for the Arts and Economic Prosperity 5 report states that cultural tourists are more likely to stay in a hotel and are more likely to spend more than $1,000 per trip. We know that our river boxes regularly bring out-of-town visitors who are active geocachers, and that this environmental and cultural awareness program is very capable of boosting economic growth and sustainability. To that end, we look forward to revamping the program's interactive passport with special offers from downtown businesses and hotels to encourage and measure cultural tourism, this impact directly associated with this program. And I would be remiss if I didn't note that this photograph was taken by social media influencer Say and Play Columbus. As mentioned, as part of this project will be the launch of the first ever artist-created geocoin. And you will see on this screen a heavy, approximately 2-inch, 2-sided, custom-minted rectangular collectible. It's highly sought after by all seekers, especially geocachers, as a reward for finding all of the caches in the series. They are individually numbered and trackable online and in the geocaching app. And they have been deployed all over the world with our previous ones, and we expect this one to be very, very exciting. The custom artwork is multi-layered translucent enamel, and it's very, very complex, telling unique visual stories about Dublin and its river boxes. Our geocoin is being designed by artist Chris Mackey of Aura Design Group of Northeast Pennsylvania. He is very well regarded in this very specialized niche, and we hope to bring him to Dublin late next summer for a special event to meet the community and interact with residents and visitors in Riverside Crossing Park. We are currently awaiting production samples and hope to unveil these new completed geocoins in the spring. Moving on to our visual art series, the deadline for our 2022 Emerging Exhibition of Student Artwork was just last Friday. We received 125 digital submissions for the 20th Annual Kindergarten through Grade 12 exhibition, which will be launching online on January 11th. Shown here is 9th grader Jonathan Jews with his 2011 self-portrait. This exhibition 10 years ago helped launch his graphic design career choice. Here is the creative team at Prolific Media, a leading digital advertising company in Chicago. Jonathan, on the far right, is now a motion and graphic designer. You can read more about this exhibition, our emerging artists, plus features about David Guillaume and the history of the Dublin Arts Center in the current issue of Dublin Life magazine. I'm happy to report that the magazine is going to be continuing its bi-monthly arts features in 2022. Other 2022 gallery highlights include an annual Top 100 Visual and Sound exhibition by Barry Van Boekel this spring, Recycled Collage by Penny Denning in early summer, a late summer exhibition by the Art Quilt Alliance, which is always extremely popular with crafters, and a year-end exhibition by popular Japanese ceramicist Masayuki Miyajima, who will again travel to Dublin for demonstrations on the wheel and to meet members of the community during his exhibition. As 2021 draws to a close, we're pleased to say that despite unexpected turns, such as the global pandemic, Dublin Arts Council was able to meet or exceed our 2019-2021 strategic plan goals in all 5 of our key areas, which included programs, events, and education, community engagement, awareness, financial stewardship and strength, and organizational excellence. Dublin Arts Council has again engaged Gallagher Consulting Group to guide us in the development of our 2022-2024 strategic plan, and I would like to thank members of council for their generous participation through interviews in the process thus far. Your feedback, along with staff and board planning, has helped us affirm our mission and vision, which you see on the screen, to guide our next 2 years centered around similar themes and focused on our mission, as you see there, to engage the community, cultivate creativity, and foster lifelong learning through the arts. We look forward to sharing the full plan with you next month when it is finalized and approved by our board, just in time for 2022. A focus area for our planning is the continuation of our art and wellness program, helping deliver art experiences that address and influence community well-being. What is art to you? We asked our board and staff to complete the sentence, art is ... or ellipse if you prefer, with just one word, and you see the results on the screen. Please take just a moment this evening to think about how you would finish art is. We thank you for recognizing and supporting all that art is in our creative community. Your continued vision really makes it happen. So thank you. And are there any questions?
Well, thank you, Janet. That was a very quick summary of what sounds like a very busy schedule. So,
thank you very much, and I appreciate your attention. I know this is your last meeting, and you have a lot on your agenda.
Oh, there's always time for art.
Thank you.
But thank you for coming, and thank you for, please pass our appreciation on to all the staff there. We certainly do appreciate the work that you do in this community, particularly during the pandemic, and how active you've been and how willing you have been to step forward and into spaces that you hadn't been before in uncomfortable situations. So we appreciate your board and all of you for those things that you've done. So
great. Well, thank you so very much. I mean, again, I wish you, I thank you and wish you a creative holiday season, and look forward to continuing collaborations in the new year. So thank you.
Good. We'll look forward to those coins for the river box catches. That's the only kind of new variant that will be welcome. I saw it said variant antique gold. So that's the only welcome variant that we will have in our city in 2022, hopefully.
Great. Let's make that happen. Thank you.
Okay, I want to take a moment for citizen comments. This is a time, an opportunity for citizens to comment on any topic that is not on this evening's agenda. I have 2 cards here that I'll read, and then if anyone is additionally would like to speak, you would be welcome to do so. So let's start with Ramesh Madhu. Welcome. Please come forward and state your name and address into the record. We look forward to hearing what you have to share with us this evening.
Thank you. My name is Ramesh Madhu. Respected Mayor, Council members, fellow citizens of Dublin, and my dear friends, namaste to all of you. My name is Ramesh Madhu. I have been living here in the city of Dublin with my wife Lakshmi and 2 kids for past 10 years. My son has graduated from OSU and is going to medical school soon. And my daughter is a second-year student at OSU. On a pre-med track, both of my kids completed their high school education at Dublin Jerome High School. I have been a volunteer for many local organizations like Hindu Swayam Sevak Sangh, it's called as HSS, and also Columbus Telangana Association, that's called as CTA, and also Seva International. HSS is a socio-cultural organization that holds Hindu values such as Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means the entire world is one family, and Naseva, Narayan Seva, which means service to humanity is service to God himself. The month of October holds a great significance for all Hindus throughout the world as we celebrate Navaratri, Dashara, Durga Puja, and Diwali. All these festivals aim towards a pursuit of knowledge of truth and reality to strive for moral order. These festivals also symbolize taking the right action and promotion of peace among all citizens. During this time of the year, we take the opportunity to give back to the community through lots of Seva projects to make our city stronger and better. During the month of October, multi-generational Hindus from different parts of the world who call the United States their home and to the color of ethnic tapestry, hereby showcasing their vibrancy in arts, dance, music, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, Ayurveda, and food in all its richness. I want to personally thank you, Mayor, City Council members, and to the City of Dublin to have proclaimed October as Hindu Heritage Month. This resolution brings local awareness in recognizing and acknowledging the significant contributions made by Hindu Americans here. I look forward to further serving the City of Dublin in acts of service and play my part in making it an excellent place to live for others. Thank you once again, Mayor, Council members, for giving me an opportunity to stand before you to express my words of appreciation for all the wonderful support the city provides everyone. Thank you for enabling us to live in the harmony together as one family. Thank you so much.
Well, that is just a wonderful thing to hear, and we are so glad that you are here, and we are so grateful that you would take time to come and speak to us this evening. We offer this citizen comments at every meeting, and we don't have a whole lot of it, but it is wonderful to hear your experiences and a little bit of culture and faith and share that with us. And so we are so pleased that you are happy to call Dublin home, because we are certainly happy that to have everyone that calls Dublin home. So thank you so much. Okay, next, Nupur. I'm sorry. You'll help me. Thank you.
Hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Nupur Nawat. I live in Dublin with my husband and my daughter. Similar to Rameshji, I have something to say about the Hindu community as well, a little bit, just my point of view. So, respected Mayor, Council members, and fellow citizens of Dublin, everybody, I would like to start by thanking Honorable Mayor for issuing the Seva Diwali proclamation, and also giving us today the opportunity to speak a little bit about the efforts made by HSS and the Hindu community to help contribute to preserve the vibrancy and diversity of this Dublin community. I live with my husband and toddler daughter in Dublin, and we're longtime natives of Ohio, recently moved to Dublin. When moving to a new city, usually the cultural acceptance and diversity of that city, that is what makes people feel like they're coming home. And in Dublin, I never felt like I came to a new city because of the diversity that the city provides, and including the various Hindu cultural organizations and social organizations that run programs for the entire family that makes us feel like we're home. Now, these organizations, a bit like HSS, they encourage the spirit of being one with the community that we're part of. They help keep the American spirit alive, and yet they help us stay rooted to our inherent Hindu traditions. We joined this HSS weekly program that includes a creative mixture of games, stories, yoga, and community service. The program also helps build community health as well as promote the spirit of giving among children as well. HSS truly teaches the mantra of Vasudevaya Kutumbakam, that literally means the whole world is one family. HSS, we recently concluded the Seva Diwali event where volunteers from various organizations collaborated and helped the community by donating 13,000 pounds of food to local food pantries. We also run school supplies drives that have been successfully running for the past 8 years. The women in HSS, they also run with like-minded organizations winter clothing drives that help women who are victims of domestic violence. And also, even during the pandemic, we've seen HSS and other Hindu community volunteers, we have been giving unwavering support with other community by delivering more than 4,000 hand-stitched masks, sanitizers, goggles, and other logistical support to people affected by the pandemic in the entire country. So just a little thank you. I'm thankful to HSS, to the Dublin community, for helping build good character among the children and people, and guiding us to help others to be selfless, humble, and compassionate, all the while being one with the community. So just thankful and happy to be here and be a part of this community and to help out. So with that, let truth and universal brotherhood prevail. God bless America.
Wonderful. Those statistics are amazing of the things that you've helped accomplish in this community. There have been so many people that have been hurting over the course of the pandemic for a variety of different reasons. And those acts of mercy and kindness that you speak of, I think have spoken volumes to the people of this community and helped to keep us together because I need to learn how to say the phrase that you said, the whole world is one family.
Vasudevaya Kutumbakam.
I'll work on it. But that is a wonderful saying that should be on the tips of all of our tongues, because that's who we desire to be as this community. And we are so grateful that for our diversity. We are so grateful for the way that the networks are knitted together and that they support everybody. So thank you for the work that you've done, and we're always happy to help support whenever we can, and certainly issuing a proclamation is not a big thing for us to do, but we certainly did want you to know how appreciative we were and how we want to honor that very significant portion of our population and really reflect on the attributes that are so significant in the month of October. So
happy to be here and happy to help out in any way we can.
Great. Well,
So
thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else present this evening that would like to speak on any item not on our agenda? Okay, Lindsay says that we have one coming in virtually, so if you could please read that.
Good evening, members of council. There, microphone works. Okay, I have a comment from Jerry Kosicki at 4313 Wyandotte Woods Boulevard, who says, I would like to thank Councilman Peterson for his efforts over the years to represent our Wyandotte Woods neighborhood, Ward 1, and the entire city of Dublin. His efforts have made the city a better place in numerous ways, wishing him all the best for his future endeavors.
Well, Mr. Kosicki, stay tuned, because there'll be more on that in this evening's meeting. But as is Mr. Kosicki's habit, he is right on it before we can even get there. So we appreciate those comments, and I know that we'll have a lot of warm wishes for Greg this evening, as it's his last meeting. Anything else, items not on the agenda this evening? Okay, that moves us to the consent agenda. Is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda? It consists of 2 meeting minutes of November the 8th and the 15th, and a legislative authority application for a liquor permit. Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second? I'll second. Thank you, Christina. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Okay, that brings us to postpone items, Ordinance 79-21.
Authorizing the provision of certain incentives to NERX Inc. or one of its affiliated companies to induce it or such affiliated company to lease a facility to create an office and its associated operations and workforce, all within the city, and authorizing the execution of an economic development agreement.
Great, thank you. And speaking of last meetings, we'll have Colleen Gilger present for staff report. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, members of council. We've been working with One Columbus and NERX, a San Francisco-based telemedicine company, to find them their first office space in Central Ohio. Just as a recap, this is a 4-year, 15% performance incentive proposal that is capped at $35,090. It is tied to 2 leases totaling 8 years. This evening, we have Sean Young with us. He is the Senior Vice President of Operations with NERX. He is here to talk a little bit about the 43 jobs that they will create and the new space in Dublin, and answer any questions that you have.
Great, well, thank you, welcome. We are so glad to have you this evening. Do you have some things you'd like to share with us?
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Mayor Grooms. Thank you, City Council members and guests. My name is Sean. I'm the Senior Vice President of Operations at NERX. NERX is a Silicon Valley startup, and we are now the largest telemedicine provider for women's healthcare in the country. We are experiencing unprecedented growth and really excited to be opening our 2nd pharmacy in the city of Dublin. We did an exhaustive state-specific research and landed on Ohio as the best place for our expansion. And then we also looked at various Central Ohio locations as well as Cincinnati locations and landed on the Tuller Road location in Dublin for our expansion as well. We think the Tuller Road expansion is great, both for its proximity to the beautiful Bridge Street renovation, access to 270 for our pharmacy professionals, as well as Dublin is just a great place to live and work. I've been a resident of the city for the last 10 years, really excited to bring new jobs to the city of Dublin that I call home, and really appreciate the partnership and support the city of Dublin is providing NERX, and really looking forward to continue to grow our company inside of this city. So thank you so much.
Well, good. We couldn't be any more thrilled to have you stay and put and, and expanding here. So thank you for that, and certainly give a warm welcome. I know our economic development team will do a wonderful job in making sure that any questions you have are answered and things of that nature.
Thank you.
Okay. Any comments, City Council? Want to take a moment for public comment? Is there anyone present this evening that would like to speak relative to this legislation? Hearing none. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo? Yes. Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Great. Thanks so much and welcome.
Thank you.
Ordinance 82-21.
Rezoning approximately 42.5 acres from R Rural District to PUD Planned Unit Development District, Highland Glen, for development of 102 single-family lots with 12.4 acres of open space and associated site improvements on the east side of Highland Croy Road, north of the intersection with Post Road, under the provisions of Zoning Code Section 153.050.
Thank you. And Ms. Roush will have our staff report this evening. Welcome, Jenny.
Great, thank you. Good evening. This, as you mentioned, this is Ordinance 82-21. This was introduced to Council on November the 8th. There are 2 accompanying pieces of legislation on tonight's agenda related to this, which are resolution for a preliminary plat and then the infrastructure agreement, which is ordinance that follows this. So just to reorient us in terms of site location, the site is located at the northeast corner of Highland Croy and Post Road and is 42.5 acres. As I mentioned, this proposal was before you in November, and there were three main items that council identified as part of the introduction of this item. Information was included in your packet, but just a quick overview of those items. So the maintenance pro forma was updated based on council's direction to include inflationary costs. So that's been incorporated as part of that and resubmitted in your packet. The second was related to stormwater maintenance and the history of that in terms of HOA ownership and maintenance versus the city of Dublin, which is outlined here on the screen, and then in more detail within your packet. And then the largest item of discussion was related to building area and lot coverage with council's request for some additional graphics, as well as then the applicant has provided a development text update in order to address that. And this specifically was related to outdoor amenities and ensuring that there would be adequate space to the rear of the lot to ensure that those are provided moving forward. So the applicant has provided in your packet a series of graphics, and as I mentioned, then updated the development text. So this first graphic is intended to show this is the southern portion of the proposed development that includes then each of the individual lots with then a building footprint that could fit on this particular lot, meeting the development requirements. And then the lighter green area then highlights what would be residual area where outdoor amenities could be incorporated based on the building layouts as they could fit on these individual lots. So this obviously shows significant area where outdoor amenities could be included. To provide a little bit further detail, then the applicant incorporated these examples into the specific lot sizes and showed then the variety of building pads that can be included on a particular lot, including the two various lot sizes that are provided for within this proposed development. So as you'll see in each, there is the individual lot, there is then the potential building pad size and the setbacks that are required, as well as then to the rear of the lots, you'll see where there's the green hatched area that would be where a patio or outdoor amenity could be included. And then they showed then a patio area, which is sort of that gray box located at the rear of each of those units that then shows a standard 10 by 14 patio space. So again, demonstrating that there is adequate space within the lot as they're configuring them with the building pads that they anticipate to construct on these lots. But to ensure that this is solidified within the development text, the applicant has provided language within the text to ensure this is maintained. So there's a requirement now within the text that requires a minimum of a 10-foot distance from the rear of the home to that rear yard setback. And then if in the instance where there might be a bump out that would encroach into that, there has to still be the allowance of at a minimum 140 square feet, which would be that 10 by 14 to be maintained at a minimum. So again, the applicant providing that in as the opportunity to address council's concerns to make sure that that patio space is adequately addressed moving forward. So with that, those are the only changes or updated materials that were provided with your packet, and recommendation of the ordinance as amended is recommended this evening. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is here as well.
Okay, want to take a moment for public comment. Is there anyone present this evening that would like to speak relative to this application? Hearing none. Council, questions, discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm glad came back with the patio dimensions because it's very helpful, because I think it adds a lot to the quality of life for those people who are going to buy your units. Between the patios in the back, you know, it is common law that we drain all units, usually down the property lines in the back. And is there enough room between those two back patio areas to allow that drainage to occur, the swale to occur that would normally occur in this kind of thing? And then if that's the case, is there enough room for any kind of screenage between the units for the privacy?
Let the applicant address the drainage question, but there would be setbacks, rear yard setbacks that have to be maintained that would allow for space between the developable portions of the lot that could accommodate that. But I'll let
Is there going to be inverts set along that, or are we going to, is that a common drainage pattern or
I'll
swale,
let
or
Mr.
how is it
Groom
going to be
answer
handled?
that.
Just out of curiosity.
Okay, thank you. My name is Charles Ruma, the president of Virginia Homes. The drainage is all down the rear line of the properties there. So there's 20 feet between the setbacks already for that drainage purpose. So there's plenty of room to create that drainage. What you're seeing here are actual units that we have developed to build on this site. And so it's very clear there's a lot of room in the back, a lot more than we expected. And as a worst case scenario, we've created the development text in order to make sure that there's some level of protection as a minimum, is really the intent. But as you can see, what our plans are, in many instances, there's 25 plus feet between the setback and the rear of the home.
Yeah, I anticipate that the homeowners are going to probably build these patios, I would think. There is a clamoring to get out in door space behind units. And then I guess what I was curious about was what was left of the green space that is between the two patio areas. Is there enough for a common swale for drainage? Because you're going to probably do a slope, 3-to-1 slope, or is that going to be punctuated with inverts along there, drainage catch basins, or how's that going to work? I mean,
There's a series of catch basins. I'm not sure how many, probably 3 down that stretch between the lots, between the 20 lots there.
Good evening, Linda Maneri from MH&T. In the packet, there is a utility plan. You can see, I think Charles described pretty well down the back of the lot. And then there are points every 3 or 4 lots that pick up storm drainage. And then the side yards end up getting, like you said, a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 slope to drain. And they get either pitched out to the street or to the back.
I think there's enough, once you get the drainage in behind these patios, is there enough room for privacy? So if someone wants to have doesn't want to look right across at their neighbor, which is the way these are laid out, that they could have some kind of planning, or is the swale going to take up those green spaces?
Well, the swale takes up some of that, but you would end up pulling some of that plant material, obviously, as you know, up out of that wet area so that those plants don't have the wet feet. But we do plan on that, and you could also do a fence as long as, I believe it's not in the setback area.
Yeah, I was just curious if there's enough room on either side. So,
Yeah, I mean,
I guess I'm worried about the quality of life for these people. I want to see that, they buy these things, they're going to be happy and, big enough backyards to enjoy themselves, and also privacy because they're all lined up in a row and facing each other, so.
Right.
I guess I would add to that, again, this is showing a typical instance of the products we've already created. In the worst case scenario, what you're describing is there enough room? I think there is still enough room, but I don't predict that we will see the bare minimum in any of the homes that we build here as far as just being that 10 feet. These are going to be spread out a little bit more in the back and have a little more room. The likelihood that 2 are going to be at the maximum back to back is highly unlikely.
Yeah, when you're talking about a 10-foot patio, you're talking about probably 2 or maybe 4 people ever using that, because it's pretty tight. If you're going to try to put a table on it, it's, so those are the kind of things, the only reason we're grilling you on this a little bit is we've run into this before. And it's turned out to be a giant minefield, because once they're built and then they come back to the city saying, hey, why'd you guys allow this? And, why wasn't there more green space behind my house? And, I really wanted a bigger patio, but I guess I'm in a setback now and I can't have it. And the idea is just keep people, give them some kind of quality of life that they're going to be happy with.
As you are well aware, we've built many homes in Dublin, and we've faced that same challenge on occasion to where people want to build more living space behind their home and run into that setback. I think being cognizant of those things and understanding the sensitivity here, and as we sell these things, making sure that those areas are properly developed is important to us.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Yeah. Jane?
I have a question, Jenny. And Mr. Ruma, the text was changed to say that you can then encroach into the 10-foot setback as long as there was 140 square foot left on the side. Is that right? Or
rear.
rear. How far can you encroach? Because it goes to John's question then about drainage.
So again, and maybe Mr. Ruma can chime in here, but as we discussed, based on what's shown on the screen here, so let's say that, looking at that first lot that's shown on the left-hand side, let's say that patio was a bump out of the building. So that's only one portion of what would be the area where outdoor amenities could be located, leaving then area even behind what could be a bump out or to the side within that developable area to still accommodate a patio. Because again, that 10 by 14 is a pretty small area shown within the larger area of where these amenities could be included.
So on these interior lots, it looks as if everyone with the housing style that you're suggesting for the interiors would have a minimum, could you go back to that one?
Sorry.
Sure. Minimum of 20 foot behind the building and the beginning of the 10-foot setback. Is that
Close
seem
to.
pretty close? And do you have in your development text, and I did read through it, but I didn't see this, do you have that these particular size pads for the 60-foot lots, these would be the sizes? In other words, you wouldn't put anything larger than the largest that you show here on these interior lots. In other words, would that 20-foot minimum be any less than that with any house on an interior lot?
So we are still developing some of our product, and we're still developing some of the options to those products. There could be a 2 or 4 foot bump to a great room, for example, or a kitchen that could go a little further in the back. So we're trying to create some flexibility while creating a minimum standard that's acceptable, knowing full well that the minimum is not going to be what we end up, where we end up every time. That's just to make sure there's a level of protection so we don't have to have residents coming back to the zoning appeals to try to have patios put in the setback. I think that's really the concern here. And that's what we want to make sure. I know 10 by 14 isn't the size that everybody's going to want, but as a minimum, that's a fairly nice patio for a residence of this size and of a lot this size. You know, these are smaller lots. We understand that. Not everybody wants a big lot. You know, some people want less maintenance. Some people want a little easier care in their home life. So that's what this product is going to deliver. That's really what we're striving for. But to answer your question, we will probably go further back at some point with some options. I just don't know that number.
You know, obviously, it's a lovely development, and it is what the neighborhood is looking forward to having. But as John was saying, and I think it's just the biggest concern, especially with the pandemic, everyone needs a place to get outside. And part of the attractiveness of living in Dublin is the ability to sit outside in your backyard and be able to have a little bit of privacy and a little bit of view or talk to your neighbors. And as you said, if you can go bigger, it even shrinks it more. 10 by 14 is not much. I don't know how else we can emphasize the need to be sure that people don't come back and ask to move into those 10-foot rear setbacks. And if it happens on the other side, pretty soon you're just bumper to bumper with hardscape, with very little room for, you know, some of the soft amenities that one enjoys in the yard. So I appreciate the fact that you have at least 20 foot here, and I would be a lot more comfortable knowing that it would not be less than that. But I think that this shows that there is space there that could do that. My worry then is if a larger pad went on the lot and there was no space other than that 10 foot, someone's going to ask to go into the setback.
Yeah, and I certainly agree with you. Outdoor space is certainly a premium these days, but indoor space is also a premium with home offices and other things to make sure that the footprint is right. And I think it's finding the right balance here that's the most important thing for us. And having some flexibility while creating some level of surety that we're not going to have every resident coming back and having to go through the appeals process, because we don't want that either.
You know, what would be really helpful is to, when someone comes to your sales center, to explain this to them. I think that's been the big problem with a lot of these projects. I don't think there was enough honesty on the part of the developer or builder on what they could and couldn't do. And, you know, and when someone's buying one of this and says, hey, I want a 6 by 60 instead of 40 by 60 or whatever he's trying to do, that, you know, it's explained to him that, hey, you know, you're just giving up your back patio, and we want you to know that. And yeah, you know, you've got an additional room or bedroom or whatever you want, but, you know, because what happens in these scenarios is they come back to us and said, hey, you did a bum job zoning this project in, and now we've been told that we can't have this, and we really would like to have it. Some people say, hey, I want a swimming pool, and some people come back with all kinds of requirements, from hot tubs to fire pit areas that, you know, you require quite a bit more room because you got to move it away from the patio. And they say, hey, I wanted a fire pit. I can't even put a fire pit in my own backyard. And now you really can't because you don't have the green space and your lot's too small. So, you know, I'd say that back to planning, or the planning department, that when you plan these things, that you take in consideration these folks have gone through the entire zoning process. And, but, you know, this is the kind of thing that, you know, maybe in this kind of project, every other unit would have been deleted and they would have had a full backyard, you know, as a planning point. But, you know, so it's important that, I think that, you know, that there's some integrity in the sales part of the unit, so that they do know what they're really going to face, because they have come back and over the years and have said, hey, you know, this isn't what we really wanted. We just looked out the back and saw green space and thought that was ours to claim, and no, it's not. So I think that'd be an important part of your presentation and your marketing center.
Thanks, John. Other comments? Kathy?
First of all, thank you very much. I would say these are some of the best renderings we've seen about how patios, and I know that was a very fast turnaround, and I think this was very helpful, so I sincerely appreciate that. Thank you. I had sort of two questions. There was a comment earlier about building the pads for the patios. Are you planning to do that, or you wouldn't get involved in patio layout at all, is my understanding. Is that right? Or
It really depends on the unit. One of our units does have a 5-foot patio that just part of the roof and overhang that could be extended on. A lot of times we like to have the patios built a year after construction, so we allow for settlement and don't run into some of those issues.
Okay. Could you please go back, Jenny, to the slide before this? So one of the questions as I was reading about the encroachment, it says it could be on the back or the side. As long as there was 140 feet on the back or the side. Any reason I'm looking at these, maybe like lot 10 or 11, you would put the patio on the side? Any reason we wouldn't just say in the back so that
Really,
we know
back,
we have?
if you go back to
Maybe I
close
misread
up,
it.
if you look at the third one to the right there, the one in the middle that shows kind of the L-shaped, it's kind of on the side, but it's really in the back. It depends on how your perspective and how you want to look at it. It's technically on both. I guess that's why we said that.
You're saying this one is,
Side of that.
oh, it's to this, but it's
The
not
one that's
really to the
41 by
side.
57, if you look at that,
I see.
it's technically on the side, but it's really more in the rear. I guess that's more of a semantic issue that.
Well, I just think for me personally, just saying to the rear so that we're not determining where that patio, because you're likely not going to build them. To me, that's still the rear of the house, right? You're not on one of the.
Yeah, I mean, I guess technically it could also extend past the foundation on the side property as long as it did not encroach in the side yard setback. So technically it's not incorrect by saying either way.
That's going to be kind of hard to do in that space, would it not? I mean.
Well, it could be 2 feet past the foundation encroaching on the side yard a little bit, but it's not in the side yard setback, but it would be considered to be in the side. So I guess it's really just going back to semantics, how you want to refer to that. I'm okay either way.
I mean, I like the fact that we're saying, look, in the rear, we have sufficient room. So I just wanted, I don't know how we could make that tighter, but when I look at this and they're in the rear, I think that's the spirit of what we're trying to say here.
I think technically it's the rear is what we would call it, because it's extending past the rear of the home. So whether it went to the side or not, it was really insignificant.
But you see what I'm
Yeah.
making sure that if you go back to that prior slide, we're not saying that you could build the patio. Jenny, if you'd be so kind as to go back again, sorry. Say, like, just take 10 or 11 for sake of argument here. That we're not saying I could encroach because I have some buildable space on, I don't know which direction is that, south, I guess, right? On those pieces of property. That's not what we're saying. And maybe maybe that's where the patio is intended to be on those homes. I don't know. Thank you.
Anything else? Other questions?
Yeah,
comments?
I got a question. Okay, so we have adjoining patio spaces, and then what is the restriction, if you could just refresh this for us, like for screenage? Say, is it a continuous, what kind of, well, first of all, what kind of fencing are we allowing? And is all the fencing going to be the same fencing? Or can there be a variation of fencing, which probably would not add to the aesthetic of this? Has any of that, those finite details been worked out, or can it be shrubbery or?
As I understand it, it would default to what the code would permit in terms of fencing, and we would finalize those details when the final development plan happens.
I thought we had conversation on this, that in these small of rear lots, we were not going to permit fencing because of the.
I think, it's part of the problems with this is people do want privacy. So, the way these things are all lined up across from each other, you're going to be looking exactly at your neighbor and realizing you're going to be drinking a substandard scotch that's very inexpensive. It might be embarrassing, but no. So on a serious note, what kind of privacy, you're going to work those details out in the future, or, because let me just caution you on one thing, that when you do this, the fencing has to be uniform. You can't allow the homeowners, somebody to put in a picket fence, the next guy to put in a horizontal fence, and it just really looks bad. So if you're going to go into those parts of the detail, you're going to have to establish that. And the next question is, and back to your point, is it a 4-foot fence, a 6-foot fence, an 8-foot fence? What's the fence? What's the quality of the fence? What kind of fence is it? Because these people are probably going to want some privacy at this kind of relationship. So.
And the fence has to be held off of the property line, right? 4 feet off the property line. So if you put, I am not at all in favor of fencing on this area. You're going to make very small yards feel almost unusable if you fence these in, because you're going to have 8 feet between your fence and the neighbor's fence.
That's right.
Because you're each going to have to be 4 feet off. And you talk about visual clutter.
You're getting to my point. So,
no fences.
So the next thing is, do we delete fences? And I'm sure the planning department's going to work this out. And is it going to be shrubbery, upright arborvitaes, hemlocks, whatever? And that's going to be the acceptable fencing? Because people are probably going to want privacy. And that's coming up, right? Before you.
So in terms of the code as would apply to this, because there's no other additional specifications in the text that I'm aware of, and again, the applicant can chime in here as well, would be a 4-foot fence. It would have to meet the required setbacks if fences were allowed. So it would have to be 4 feet in height. It would have to be an open fence. So it would not be permitted to be a solid fence. That would only be, that would not be permitted as part of this. So, and landscape details, those would be worked out in terms of planting plans and standardization of what that looks like. That would happen at the final development plan. But I don't know, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I don't think we would want big privacy fences going down the lot lines and doing that. We would want a consistent fence throughout the community. I think doing what may be most appropriate is like a 4-foot cedar fence that we have a specific design for, that's allowable along a patio or something to create some privacy there, but I don't think we want to get into large fences and fencing the properties off. I think we want to stick more along with the Dublin code.
Is fencing permitted in post-preserve?
I would have to look at that specifically, but most residential neighborhoods have some allowances for a fence. Sometimes they're limited though by type, whether it's like a split rail fence or something that is more rural in character and not a solid fence. Typically they're
much more open.
I would be interested in understanding what Post Preserve's fence requirements or capabilities are, because those lots that are adjoining Post Preserve, that I don't think it would be appropriate for the backyard neighbor to be able to have a fence that, you know, that you're sharing a property line with, and you can't have a fence. These lots are so small, I think we would make them feel substantially smaller if we were to allow fencing to put in. That doesn't mean they can't plant a natural fence and hedge, you know, hedge materials or screening materials, things like that. But I would not be in favor of fencing on a lot this small for the reasons I already stated. Other comments? I have one additional if everyone's finished. Yeah, Kathy had asked the question about the side yard allowances for patios, and can we strike side and simply use rear verbiage for those?
I think the only time it comes into play is on the ends, like lot 10, if you want to put that, Jenny, if you could put the map up, please. If we look towards the end, maybe on lot 21 or 1 or 10, some of those areas have larger areas to the side that may be more usable and suitable for a patio. I don't think
Maybe we
That's
could
kind of
limit
why
it
we
to
said
when there
that.
wasn't an adjacent home, that they should be to the rear unless there isn't an adjacent
Yeah.
home.
Again, I don't want to prohibit them from building out to the side a little bit. I don't think it's designed
Right, but
to
that's
be
still the rear of the
on
house, I
side.
think.
I think it's really, as long as it's at the rear.
Yeah.
And it can go into the side, it's fine, and maybe if it's not adjacent to another,
Yeah, I just
I
think
think that's fine.
I think
That's-
it's in spirit of what we're saying, give them enough space back there to build something and not be on top of the neighbor is what we're trying to
Absolutely.
be sure happens. And I think being specific on the language here might just give me anyway some comfort that
I
we're,
think that's a fine suggestion to say, as long as it's not abutting another property.
thank you.
Then my last comment would be, you know, you show on all of the models that you had a minimum of a 20-foot setback. But I know oftentimes somebody will buy 2, 4, 5 extra feet onto a room. But I would be supportive of that, a requirement of a 20-foot setback. That way, if someone wants to build a more usable patio outdoor space, they're not limited to just the 10 feet. Because, you know, on whatever housing style 13, 15, 18, 20 are, you know, if they put 4 or 6 feet on the back of that in an addition in terms of a bump out of a great room or whatever, now you're down to somewhere between 14 and 16 feet in the buildable area. So if you're going to put a 10-foot patio, you're all the way back into, you know, approaching the swale. So if you want to do planting or something on the edge of your patio, now you're going to be infringing upon the drainage. So I would be supportive of limiting in our text saying that there must be a 20-foot setback.
So what we already have is a 20-foot setback. So you're saying, in actuality, a 30-foot setback, 10 feet plus 20 more?
No, whatever bump out or whatever addition that they might purchase with the home, if they bumped out the great room or whatever, and you, on here, you had a 20-foot setback, but now it ends up being 16 feet because of the bump out they purchased. It's my understanding that these are the base models that you have the footprints for. If you could go to the footprint.
These are the base models that we have designed so far, but we already are saying that we're not to increase. I mean, we're already saying there's 20 feet because there's that additional 10 feet.
So on this base model, let's take the one on the left. If they were to purchase a bump out or an additional space, where would it be on this unit?
Probably on the right-hand side of that plan. Or it could be on the patio side. It depends. That's the dinette. So it could be on either side, really.
But it couldn't be on the back?
Yeah, on the back, absolutely.
And then you would have less than 20 feet.
Correct.
So my point is I would say that the minimum setback, net, after they've purchased everything they want to purchase, needs to be 20 feet. So if they want to purchase a bump out to a room, it would have to go to a side. It couldn't go to the rear to reduce that 20-foot setback down to 14 feet.
So that ultimately becomes a 30-foot setback, which I think on a smaller lot is a little bit much for what we're trying to accomplish.
But almost all these people likely are going to bump out a wall, right? What percentage of these units are going to bump out a wall? So now we're not talking about 20-foot setback anymore. Now we're talking somewhere between 14 and 16 feet.
What we're saying is there's a minimum of 10 feet from the rear setback to the foundation already. And what you're saying is you want to make that 20?
Right.
In all of these depictions here, it is a minimum of 20 feet from the back of the house to the rear setback for that 10-foot patio to be housed. Now, on this unit to the left, a 40 by 60 pad, if I want to buy an additional 6 feet of family room or 4 feet of family room, and I'm going to put it on the back of this unit, there is no longer 20 feet. There is 14 or 16 feet. So by the time I put a 10 by 10 patio, I am right up against the swale. So if I want to do a planting on the back side of my patio for privacy screening, now I'm into the swale, right? So I would be in favor of saying the rear setback can't be less than 20 feet so that you have room for a 10 by 10 patio and still have some space for privacy planting. Am I being clear?
Yeah, you are clear. I get it.
But they're allowed to encroach then. The text allows them to encroach into the setback so they can get around it. Do you know what I'm saying?
They can on these because they'll be in the middle of the drainage swale.
The other thing to consider here is in the example, the one that's 41 by 57, when we typically bump something, we're not bumping the entire rear. So if you're forcing it to be 20 feet and only half the unit wants to be bumped out within that area, all of a sudden you can't do that. Meanwhile, there's plenty of room for a large living area and landscaping around that.
To the right or to the left.
Yeah, that 41 by 57 certainly is the most pleasant for outdoor space, right? Because you can tuck it into there. But most of the units, at least if you go to the next slide, Jenny, please, where you had the actual units laid out, that represents very few of the units. There's 2 labeled 7 on the west side, but those are the only 2 units that are in these really tight areas that are labeled like that.
Correct. That was just illustrative. These are not restricted to just these unit types. They could.
Right.
It's really the diversity that
it would be hard to put 2 of the 7 units back to back. You know, that would be pretty uncomfortable space for the built environment, the feel of it. I don't know if my fellow council members support
I think it's a good one. I think it's a good solution to guarantee enough patio space for each unit, because there are going to be people who say, hey, I want to add 10 feet on the back of my unit. And there's basically not going to be much outdoor living space, so.
Sure, because that smaller unit's 2,400 square feet.
Yeah. So, depending on your family size, your needs, whether you want a den, an extended family room, I could see that. So, no, I think it's a good way to protect the idea of having some kind of outdoor living space. Makes sense.
So let me understand. You're saying that you want 20-foot required between the back of the house and the 10-foot rear yard setback,
Yes.
at a minimum.
Between the furthest part of the back of the house, right? So if they only bump out a portion of that back part, that it's still like that's the furthest back piece is the piece that.
Right. You would still allow an encroachment into the 10-foot setback.
No.
Okay, so that's another option. Now, I'd like to understand this. I don't know why it was suggested to allow encroachment if you thought that it was adequate. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, if we didn't do that 20-foot, why allow the encroachment? Because, like you said, if you allow an encroachment with a patio, 10-foot's not very far. So if the one behind you had an encroachment, you have very little land between. You have very little swale, very little. So we're just trying to get so that we don't all run into a problem of people wanting to have more than a 10 by 4 foot patio.
Yeah, going with a 30-foot setback and not allowing any encroachment is just not going to be acceptable. There are too many cases where we're going to need to encroach on that and get further back into the lot while providing plenty of outdoor space. I think that's the important thing. What we're really after is trying to avoid the scenario where people are coming back for appeals and putting these things in a setback. And what we're allowing here is significant space to allow them to do that. And encroaching, it's only on that one, would only be on that one side where that's where the current setback is at 10 feet. We're saying you can go closer to that, but there has to be enough room for a patio and outdoor space.
Right, I don't think it should be,
What that number is, that the square footage that is acceptable as a minimum, but I think 10 by 14 as a minimum.
it's a bare minimum. I mean, it's not much at all. And I think planning and zoning had it right by not allowing encroachment into that 10-foot. I mean, it guarantees that you have a 20-foot swale, period. That's what their concern was. And I don't know why you would vary from that. I mean, I think it's going to be difficult, but people are going to have to understand that they can't come back and ask to move into that 10-foot setback.
Well, I don't think from an engineering perspective, now you start losing your ability to drain. So I appreciate these schematics of what these houses could be here. But in reality, they're likely all going to get bigger than what they are. And you're going to end up with less space for your outdoor. You know, with this 10-foot setback to the drainage swale, you're looking at patios that are 20 feet apart. The end of your patio to the beginning of your neighbor's patio is 20 feet. And it's a swale that you can't really plant anything in, because if you disturb the swale, it's not going to drain. So.
But, you know, if you look at some of the EPCOM product, the product just up the street across from Riviera, just down the street, sometimes there's less than that. And it's a beautiful product, and people love that proximity. That it hasn't been a huge issue. This is only 20 lots. It's similar to that type of living. That's a type of living that we're talking about as far as being on a smaller lot. These lots are actually a lot larger than what those are built on, but it's that similar type of feel. This is not a typical lot that we'd see in a Riviera or a larger community that has a 100 or 95-foot lot. So I think there are two things. We're really trying to consider what is going to be most acceptable for these folks to not have to come back in and go through the appeals process. That's what we're trying to avoid here, while trying to create a nice project that's going to stand up to the test of what we build in Dublin. And I think that's what we've done here. We're trying to create that minimum so it's right.
Well, then perhaps a solution would be if the bump out is only a portion of the back of the house and not the entirety of the back of the house, that there be some portion that leaves 20 feet. So if the family room over here is going to get bumped out 6 feet, that the living room or dining room or whatever room is over here maintains the 20-foot clearance, so that the patio could be tucked in similar to like number 7. So you're creating an L-shaped area in which you can still have outdoor space. It's buildable. Would something like that work?
Yeah, say that again.
So let's imagine number 7 here. Okay, let's just say that is really number 14 with a 6-foot bump out of the great room. So there would be a portion of 14 that would still have 20 foot to the setback build. Not the entirety of the back of the house, but a portion of the rear of the house. Does that make sense? So that we're creating this L shape or this nook in which we can still have a meaningful outdoor space constructed. Does that make sense? So there would be a portion of every house that had the 20-foot room for outdoor space, not the entirety of it.
How do we make sure we understand what what is that amount that's allowable to, is it?
Right.
half a
I think that
unit?
would be up to planning, up to Jenny and planning to work those out as the building permits came in.
So, Chris, the only problem with that is if you look at unit 46, okay, and you allow a 50% or 40% or 30% rear bump out, or you look at unit 50, or you look at unit 52, you know, you pretty much eliminated or unit 13, or unit 20, or unit 18, or, you know, if you allow that, there's almost going to be a negligible patio left, you know, that bump out on those smaller units, you know what I'm saying? It all disappears. I mean, there's no living space hardly.
I'm just trying to find a solution
I
that
know
we could
you
all
are.
live with.
Would the solution, would this be helpful? You simply, well, I was going to say, you leave it as is, you do not allow, our concern is they're coming back for appeals into the 10-foot setback. And planning and zoning said, no encroachment, period. We're not going to even deal with appeals. It's already out there in front. It doesn't limit the size of the house, I understand that, but at least it limits the appeals. Who wants to sell a house without any sort of outdoor amenity? I can't imagine. The difference with Epcon is that all their patios are on the side, and their privacy is the wall of the side of the next house.
Right.
This is back to back.
Right.
And if we allow encroachment into the setback, you can't plant back there at all to get any privacy. So you can't allow encroachment into the
Well, and if
setback.
I could clarify, so if I may, as it's written, it's encroaching into that 10-foot allowance between the building and the setback. It's not allowing encroachment into the required rear yard. So just to clarify that, no, it's meant to say there's a minimum distance, and then you could encroach up to a certain extent as long as they preserved that square footage only within the buildable area, not encroaching into the required setback. That stays constant. Sorry to interrupt you, I just wanted to be clear.
So with that clarification, thank you. I wonder if, to the point, if it doesn't extend across the back of the house, right? That we have that 20 feet guaranteed at some point that would be big enough to put some patio there. Because then if the resident comes back to us and says they want to build one, there's actually a space to do it. That may not be where there would be their preference, but we aren't saying, no, you can't have a patio, if you will. I mean, that there is a space for which that could potentially be done. On those smaller units, that's going to be really important, because once that is built, there is no other place to go. So if that is an agreeable thing, keep it in the rear as we agreed to and make that change, you might still allow for a place to put a patio. Okay, well, we need to make some headway here. Jenny, do you have some suggestions for us?
So Jennifer and I were discussing a potential option. So again, depending on within the text, it currently talks about a minimum of 10 feet required between the rear of the home and the setback to allow for patio and outdoor space, then allowing for that encroachment with a square footage requirement. It could be, again, if you want to increase that minimum setback or the minimum distance between, but also allow for the encroachment as long as they maintained up to a certain portion of that buildable area. That way they would still have some flexibility to have their bump out and a substantial patio area. That is a potential option.
I think the minimum patio we have to contemplate, really the area is 14 feet, because you have 10 foot of patio and then you're going to need 4 feet of plant bed to have any level of privacy or and any sense of place, right? Other than just being on a concrete pad out in the middle of the grass. So I would say then at a minimum that there must be 14 feet of clearance. So, you know, we have the 20 feet here, but if somebody did a 6-foot bump out on a portion of their unit, then you'd have to have at least 14 feet. And that doesn't get you much. I mean, that's 10 feet. That's from the wall to right here. You know, and then a little plant bed. Okay. I don't love it. I wish it were a little bit more, but I could live with that. The minimum of 14 feet.
Okay.
14 feet is fine. I would like to just clarify the width or size so we don't we can make sure we all agree, and the planning staff and people down the road that aren't involved in this conversation know exactly what we're accepted
Okay.
to do.
You know, and I'm not
How
sure.
can we get clarity for
I
you
guess
on
if we
that?
have 14 feet, I mean, is 14 by 14 a minimum size that's agreeable? What's that? How many?
Well, it's a 10-foot patio and a 4-foot plant bed in order for them to do some screening, to plant, to do a planting so that there's some sort of enclosure, some sense of privacy.
Okay.
So it's the 10 by 10 or 10 by 14 pad, and then it's a 4-foot plant bed.
So if it's a 14 feet wide, I guess maybe that,
That would be the minimum.
I mean, that's kind of what we've said here. I guess we'll make that 10 feet, 14 feet. Would that be more acceptable?
Yeah, I think that then we could always say to anyone that came in is that you do have space for a patio. Maybe it isn't the space exactly where you want it to be, but that's the planned space. And I could feel good. I hope my fellow council members could feel good about that being a defensible position. Okay. All right, so Jenny, you had taking it to the rear, and then we have a minimum of 14 by 14
That allows for the patio and the 4-foot
that allows
landscape
for a
bed.
patio area.
And then are we retaining the allowance for them to encroach? Because if so, then that square footage needs to be bumped up to make sure that that accommodates that increase.
And that encroaching is into the 10-foot setback? Where's the encroaching to?
It would be within the hatched area. So you're never going beyond the red hash line. It would be, again, this whole discussion that we're having of this distance is a minimum of 10 that has to be preserved between the patio and where the required rear yard starts.
Yes.
So they would be allowed to encroach, but they would have this entire area then to the right of the patio that would accommodate that if that patio became a bump out.
And how far could they encroach into that 10 feet?
As long as they maintained whatever that minimum square footage is, they could encroach.
The entirety of it?
Yeah, but they would, again, have to preserve that portion, that square footage portion, which currently is based on the previous number, which was 10 by 14. So if they're going to be 14 by 14, that's almost 200 square feet. So that's what I was questioning, whether that should be increased to match that number.
It should, yes.
Okay. Okay, so we'll make that modification as well.
Otherwise, we'll get right back to where we were.
Right, exactly. Okay, and I do have an answer about the fences as well.
Okay,
So,
and
which
yes?
is prohibited.
It is permitted and
Prohibited.
Prohibited.
In post-preserve and then as well as in autumn rose woods.
for good reason. And I would be in favor of prohibiting fences in this one as well.
That's what I.
Yeah.
You okay with that?
Yeah.
All right, I think, did we get everyone's issues resolved? Okay, Jenny, do you want to review the conditions just so that we can make sure that we're all on?
Point of clarity, you're saying prohibit fences in the entire community, not just on the smaller lots? Just-
Yeah, because post-preserve doesn't allow them, so if those units that are adjacent to post-preserve have fences, well, the people in post-preserve will say, wait, I bought in here because I didn't want to look at fences, and now I have to look out my backyard at fences.
We are fine with that, thank you.
What happens if you have a pool or, well,
Well, those rules.
those are different,
Those,
right?
yeah, tick in at a different point.
have the health, safety?
Yep. I don't think any of these lots are big enough for a pool anyhow, but a hot tub, which has different fencing requirements, but, okay.
Yes, so then I would then modify, so we're modifying the patio section to increase the minimum distance to 14 feet for a 10-foot patio and a 4-foot landscape bed, and increasing that minimum square footage, I'm going to say 200 because that's just rounding up, and that it be limited then to the rear of the home so that we're clear on that, and then adding a provision about fences being prohibited.
Are you okay with those changes?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. Okay, that took us a long time to get there, but I will, I would like to, we'll just call the roll on that then. Jenny, as amended.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo? Yes. Mr. Peterson? Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Great, I will make a motion to modify the order of business to consider Resolution 73-21 at this time. Is there a second? Thank you, Christine and Jenny. Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Mayor Ambrose Grooms.
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa.
Yes.
Ms. Soludo. Ms. Fox.
Yes.
Mr. Reiner.
Okay, we will move Resolution 7321 up to handle all your business at this point in time.
Approving and accepting the preliminary plat Highland Glen for the subdivision of 42.5 acres to establish 102 single-family residential lots, 9 public rights-of-way, and 12.4 acres of public open space located northeast of the intersection of Highland Croy Road with Post Road.
I'll introduce it. And Jenny will stay with you with the staff report.
Okay, great, thank you. So again, this is a subdivision of 42.5 acres of land into 102 single-family lots that we reviewed as part of the preliminary development plan. This incorporates, shown on this slide and then the subsequent slide, these various single-family lots, as well as 6 open space reserves and the extension of 3 public streets, as well as then 5 new public streets to accommodate this development, with then the main entrance drive off of Highland Croy. The preliminary plat criteria have been met with this proposal, and the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this and recommended approval to City Council on September the 16th, and we recommend approval of this resolution this evening.
Great, thank you. Want to take a moment for public comment? Is there anyone present this evening that would like to speak relative to this legislation? Hearing none, council questions, discussion? This will be a lot easier. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Fox.
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa.
Yes.
Mr. Keeler.
Yes.
Mr. Reiner. Ms. Soludo. Mr. Peterson. Mayor Ambrose Grooms.
Yes. Well, thank you for indulging us this evening, and I think it's going to be a great product, although it took us a little while to get here, but we certainly do appreciate your partnership in it.
Well, we'd like to thank you as well as the planning staff. There was a lot of thought into a lot of details from the last applicant to what we put through today, and everybody put a lot of time in, and we certainly appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Wish you the best of luck there. Okay, Ordinance 83-21.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an infrastructure agreement with Paragon Building Group Limited in Union County for the Highland Glen development.
Very good. And our staff report will be Ms. O'Callahan. Welcome, Megan.
Good evening, members of council. There are no changes to this ordinance from the first reading. However, I do have a couple updates. The traffic impact study has now been accepted by both Union County and the city of Dublin, and council requested additional information regarding a potential incentive district or residential TIF for the Highland Glen development. As mentioned in the staff report that was provided for this evening, the proposed infrastructure agreement provides the flexibility to create a residential TIF on this development in the future, but does not require that a TIF be created, so we do have time to evaluate that option. The potential TIF performance information that was requested, as well as all the information from the first reading, was provided for council's reference this evening, and staff recommends approval of Ordinance 8321, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Want to take a moment for public comment? Is there anyone present that would like to speak relative to this legislation? Hearing none, council questions, discussion?
I just wanted to make a quick comment. Megan, thank you very much to you and the team. I think it is a very interesting agreement and a very good way to see if we can't minimize the impact on the residents as we're doing an interchange and doing this development. And I appreciate that work and the partnership to get this done. So thank you.
Other comments? So we'll evaluate at some point in the time in the future if we wish to engage this TIF actually coming to fruition. So that's not a decision we're making this evening. Okay. Anything further? Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Peterson. Ms. Fox.
Yes.
Mr. Keeler.
Yes.
Ms. Soludo. Mayor Ambrose Grooms.
Yes.
Mr. Reiner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, this brings us to second reading public hearing ordinances. Ordinance 84-21.
Adjusting ward boundaries of the city of Dublin as required by Article 9.04 of this revised charter.
And Mr. Rogers will have our staff report this evening. Welcome, Homer.
Good evening, members of council. There are no changes from the first reading other than to correct the numbering of the sections of the ordinance itself. What was identified as Section 4 is actually Section 3. Other than that, subject to your questions, staff recommends approval.
Great, thank you. I'm going to take a moment for public comment. Is there anyone present this evening that would like to speak relative to this legislation? Hearing none. Council questions, discussion? Hearing none. Thanks for all your work on that, Homer. Jenny, would you please call roll?
Ms. Ludo? Yes. Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Mr. Reiner? Yes. Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes. Okay, ordinance 85-21.
Authorizing the city manager to execute an easement purchase and sale agreement and 4 easement agreements with AEP Ohio Transmission Company, Inc. as part of the Amlin Dublin 138 kilovolt transmission line project.
Very good. And Mr. Hammersmith will have our staff report. Welcome, Paul.
Good evening, members of council. All information provided at the first reading remains current. However, at the first reading, there were 2 items discussed that I wanted to provide some follow-up information. The first item was regarding allowing small cell or other telecommunication companies or those providers within the easement area. While the easements are exclusive to AEP and its contractors, they do not prevent the city of Dublin from granting easements to other providers so long as those easements do not interfere with AEP's rights. So we as the grantor have the ability to do that. Second, regarding future tree trimming and removal within the easement area, in the case of trees that endanger the safety of AEP's facilities, AEP shall be entitled to trim or remove such trees after notifying the city. In all other cases, AEP shall be entitled to trim or remove trees only after notifying the city and receiving the city's consent. So we are working to revise that language in the easements themselves.
Great, thank you. Want to take a moment for public comment. Is there anyone present this evening that would like to speak relative to this legislation? Hearing none, council questions, discussion?
Yeah, just have a question. I really appreciate that because, you know, it's long, University Boulevard could be very pretty. They're 65 foot tall. So we could plant trees that would only reach a certain height, and that would be allowed. We wouldn't have to worry about trimming. So they wouldn't tell us no. In other words,
Correct.
I'm thinking of the aesthetics, the future aesthetics of the boulevard. Be okay.
Yes.
Okay, sounds good.
John?
Question, you know, as many battles as we had with AEP, and it used to be Columbus and Southern, who was very sensitive. They had a horticulturist on staff, and they'd run the wires right through the trees and trim them out. You know, when the folks came from New York, I think they were a little more aggressive in how they trimmed the trees, which was probably a money savings effort for them. So back to the lines that state that they have to, when would they have to inquire with the city to trim the trees? It said pretty blatantly that they have the rights, you know.
Yeah, only in cases where it endangers their facilities. So if it's a safety issue, that they would be allowed to trim or remove the trees. But again, it's after notifying us, but it doesn't need our consent.
Yeah, you know, and that's sort of questionable because, you know, hey, you know, this tree's, you know, in our way and it's running, this wire's running through this tree, and so we're going to just cut this tree down. And that's where we've always been drug out as city council people to defend the trees and, you know, why did you guys let them do this? So.
Is there a definition of safety for them?
Not necessarily, but I mean, their goal is not to have vegetation in the lines themselves and to have clearance.
Yeah, Dave.
Could I just comment? Paul, isn't it true that AEP, even after they do line trimming under transmission, you know, I always think of the right tree, right place program that always rings true in my mind because I've had to live it for a number of years with them. That's essentially what we're going to do here, right? We're going to plant the right kind of tree that doesn't grow up into the lines.
Absolutely.
Right? So
And that's consistent with
what
Sawmill,
kind of,
or with the Emerald Parkway up
yeah, so
near
what kind of tree are we talking about then? Is it like a, I don't
Well,
know.
our goal was more ornamental and a medium height tree.
Crabapples and-
Yes.
You know, that was probably the newer philosophy 20, 30 years ago. You know, let's plant dwarf trees under the lines. But, you know, when you look at the aesthetics of some of these old cities like Bexley and Arlington and stuff, you're looking at a person's backyard, you actually see the lines are disappeared into the trees. And someone has successfully convinced whoever the electrical supply company was not to cut the trees down, not to butch the tops out of them, you know. So you're just staring at a gaggle of wires running across your backyard. So, you know, that's always been the battle I think we've had with them, trying to get them to have some kind of aesthetic quality to their tree trimming, which is more expensive because if you know the company that does it from Asplin, they get different kind of directions all the time. So, you know,
I think the
Legally, I
difference,
think we're giving up those rights, but I guess we're pretty much going to have to anyway, so.
I think the difference between what you're describing in this, John, is the 138 kV transmission lines versus something that's mounted on a wooden pole.
In the height.
Yeah.
And is that really separated in this ordinance, the different kind of lines?
Yeah, this is definitely, I mean, transmission is defined within the
Okay.
easements themselves.
Okay,
I
thank
don't
you.
know of a tree that you could carve out of the height of these,
Right.
maybe some 80-foot lindendron or something, but other than that, there's not many.
Right.
Okay. Other questions, comments?
And staff does recommend approval.
I thought we already heard that from you because I already asked for public comment. Okay.
Thank you.
We did ask for public comment on this already, okay. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner? Yes. Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo? Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Ordinance 86-21.
Amendments to zoning code sections 153.045 through 153.048 to establish development requirements and procedures for mixed-use Regional 4 district within the Dublin Corporate Area Plan.
And our staff report will be Ms. Roush. Welcome back, Jenny.
Thank you. This ordinance was introduced to council on November the 15th. And as part of that discussion, we had in-depth discussion about screening of mechanicals and how that related to building height. The proposal that was before you at that meeting incorporated screening height into the overall building height, which contrasts with the rest of the code where those two items are separate. Obviously, this provision has, there were concerns raised regarding building height not being artificially increased, but also then effectively reducing the overall agreed upon height between the neighbors and commercial property owners. So based on council's discussion and direction, we made revisions to make the requirement consistent. So removing the stipulation that the mechanical screening would be incorporated into the overall building height, but obviously keeping in mind and accounting for within the code that they should be located as appropriately as they can be away from the residential areas to ensure that they're not negatively impacting those residential units. And obviously that would be included as part of the required reviewing body's review of any application going forward. So we incorporated the language within the code to reflect that. And I also provided some graphics within your packet, which I'll go through here briefly just to demonstrate how these pieces all fit together with the code in relation to the residential development and the commercial development itself. So we provided some landscape buffering requirements, or excuse me, graphics that show a potential commercial development with then you can see mechanical units on top of the building located central to that, with then the screening obviously limited to just around the mechanical units themselves, thus not artificially increasing the building height. The code does recommend that parking be located between the building and the residential uses so that there's that additional setback. And then there is a very significant landscape buffer accounted for within the proposed code. And then you see the residential development behind there. And then we just provided another view that shows something similar again, just so you get the depth of potential building to location to the residents, being mindful of ensuring that mechanicals are located appropriately and screened as well. And then we just provided a series of graphics that shows how this would work in terms of the various roof types. So a flat roof, again, you'd see just the screening of the mechanicals on top of the building. If there's a gabled roof, if there's any screening, that would be located along the peak of the roof, but again, as far forward as they can to make that happen. And then if there's a gable roof with a parapet, then there would be mechanicals that are screened, and in this instance, screened by the entirety of the parapet, so you wouldn't see it at all. So those all would fit within as the code has been revised. So with that, we are recommending approval of the ordinance as amended based on council's direction. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jenny. I want to take a moment for public comment. Is there anyone present this evening that would like to speak relative to this legislation? Hearing none, council questions, discussion?
I have a question for you, Jenny. So a parapet around the entire perimeter of the building would not be something that would be recommended or allowed. In other words, you know how some buildings are parapet around the entire building, just screens everything on the roof. I think that was the biggest concern, is that it actually raised the entire height of the building. So is this something that we can designate that screening would be around the mechanicals and certainly not around the entire perimeter of the building?
If they wanted to build a parapet around the entire building, then that would be subject to the maximum building height. So
Okay.
it would be if they have these units themselves screened in the way that we showed them center of the building with just minimal screening to meet the requirement, that would not adhere to that. But if they did a roof with a parapet, that would
And
have to
that's
be-
the height.
Yeah.
And I think that is what I was speaking to.
Okay.
The fear that the parapet would become an increased building height. But certainly what you've shown would be, I believe, acceptable to the community.
Okay.
Reasonable.
Well, and that's going to be subject to discussion at planning and zoning.
planning and
When that
zoning.
would come, so the neighbors would have yet another opportunity to participate in that conversation of
Right,
where that
although-
parapet would exist.
This would not necessarily come before planning and zoning, would it?
For this particular, if we're speaking of the undeveloped parcel, there, in order to develop that, that would require planning and zoning commission approval because there's.
Even after it's gone through the rezoning?
Yes, because it's subject to, it's a new building, new structure. So expansions, things like that, those can be constructed without having to move forward, but would be such a substantial development that would require P and Z approval.
It's not in a straight zoning district.
Right, I knew it wasn't, but I couldn't remember if this would go through simply a staff review. Is there a way to make notation of what you just said somewhere that makes it in the history, so that when it comes before planning and zoning, that's clear?
We could clarify that within the
Okay.
code if
That
that's
would be great.
council's pleasure.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
One more question for you. When it comes to the rezoning and to just the new code, do we have yet, how far along are we on the design guidelines?
So those are in the process of being changes to that incorporated with then the MUR1 district. So we're working on that. The outcome of that was pending CDC's review of that and recommendation. So the goal would be to bring that forward as a comprehensive effort that way, because there's lots of transition pieces between the different sub areas. So we want to make sure that was a really cohesive document.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything further? Hearing none, Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Ms. Aludo?
Okay, ordinance 87-21.
A rezoning of 27 parcels from Community Commercial District, Suburban Office and Institutional District and Planned Unit Development to Mixed-Use Regional District 4, MUR4.
Great, Jenny's working overtime tonight.
You're stuck with me again. So no changes from the introduction. We recommend approval of this rezoning application.
Very good. Is there any member of the public here this evening that would like to speak relative to this legislation? Hearing none, council questions, discussion? Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo? Mr. Peterson? Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 88-21.
To establish appropriations based on the 2022 operating budget of the City of Dublin, State of Ohio for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2022.
Okay, we'll mix it up and go with Mr. Stifler for this staff report. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Good evening, members of council. There are no changes to this ordinance from the first hearing, and staff recommend approval.
Great, thank you. Is there any member of the public present this evening that would like to speak relative to this legislation? Hearing none. Council questions, discussion? Hearing none. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo? Yes. Mr. Peterson? Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes. Ordinance 89-21.
Amending the annual appropriations for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2021.
Okay, we'll stick with you, Matt, for the staff report.
Good evening, members of council. This ordinance was amended since its first hearing. We've received notice of additional staff resignations that will require additional payments from the accrued leave reserve fund.
when those payments are made before the end of the calendar year. So in order to make those payments, we're requesting some additional appropriations at the second hearing of this ordinance. There are appropriations, there's funding available in the fund, there just isn't appropriation authority. So this won't require any additional transfers, it's just using money in the fund. And with that, staff recommends approval.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone present this evening that would like to speak relative to this legislation? Hearing none, council, questions, comments? On the other side of those resignations, there may be some savings at some point until those positions are filled, perhaps?
That is correct. Out of a different fund, unfortunately, for my purposes.
Very good. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Peterson? Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo? Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ordinance 90-21.
Amending Section 31.07 Campaign Contribution Limits and amending Section 31.08 Campaign Finance Disclosure of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Dublin, Ohio to update the campaign contribution and finance disclosure regulations.
And our legal counsel will have our staff presentation this evening.
Good evening, members of council. There have been no changes since the first reading of this ordinance, and staff recommends approval. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good, thank you. Is there any member of the public here this evening that would like to speak relative to this legislation? Hearing none, council, questions, discussion? Well, thank you for going through that exercise and providing us all of that information. We certainly do appreciate it. Jenny, would...
Mr. Keeler?
Oh, what? Oh, sorry. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Keeler? Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo? Yes. Mr. Peterson? Yes.
Okay, brings us to introduction, first reading, public hearing ordinances. Ordinance 91-21.
Authorizing the city manager to execute and accept necessary conveyance documents and contracts to acquire certain property located at 7250 Riverside Drive, identified as Franklin County parcel number 273-00841-100 from Hamdi Halal and Aiza El Morsi, husband and wife, for the public purpose of constructing a new water line extension and shared use path, which shall be open to the public without charge.
Thank you. And we'll go back to Mr. Hammersmith for our staff report.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Paul. I want to take a moment for public comment. Is there any member of the public present here this evening that would like to speak relative to this legislation? Hearing none, council, questions, discussion? I know that there's a lot of folks looking forward to a footpath there along Riverside Drive. We will look forward to hearing second reading, public hearing on January the 10th. Ordinance 92-21.
Authorizing the city manager to execute and accept necessary conveyance documents and contracts to acquire certain property located at 7410 Riverside Drive, identified as Franklin County parcel number 273-008-66300 from Billie Jean Laney, trustee of the Billie Jean Laney Revocable Living Trust, created May 18, 2011, for the public purpose of constructing a shared use path which shall be open to the public without charge.
Thank you. Paul?
Parcel 11. So all the information I just stated previously all applies with the exception of, again, this is the Laney property and this is... That would help, wouldn't it? This is the Laney property and this is only for a shared use path, where the previous easement was for both a shared use path and utility easement.
Very good, thank you. Want to take a moment for public comment? Anyone present this evening like to speak relative to this legislation? Hearing none, council questions, discussion?
I just have a quick question, just for information, because I don't know this, because I haven't been down Bright Road since we closed off the cul-de-sac. How far does a walking path on Bright Road go? Does it go all the way to the end?
It does not. Presently, it's just adjacent to the school.
Okay.
And that's really as far west as it goes presently.
Okay. And when we closed it off at the cul-de-sac, can you get through from Bright Road now to this new walking path? Will you be able to?
You will with this project.
And there'll be a little walking path that takes you from there. That's great. That connectivity is great. Okay, thanks.
And the folks on Bright Road are really looking forward to this because all the GPS maps and cars still have Bright Road entering or exiting onto Riverside Drive, and there's really nothing there. So if you drive by, you'll see a series of ruts where people continue to access Riverside Drive from the cul-de-sac that is Bright Road. So this walking path in the associated planting will really help those residents up and down there as well.
If we could change GPS, we really would. We don't have
It's
that.
easier to plant a few trees. Okay, we will look forward to second reading on January 10th for that as well. It brings us to ordinance 93-21.
Authorizing the city manager to execute and accept necessary conveyance documents and contracts to acquire certain property located at 7230 Riverside Drive, identified as Franklin County parcel number 273-008-73000 from Donna I. Brown for the public purpose of constructing a new water line extension and shared use path which shall be open to the public without charge, recognizing Tamara L. Brown and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, and we'll stick with you, Paul.
So once again, the same background information provided with the two previous ordinances applies to this ordinance. This ordinance is also part of the third group of acquisitions and is from the Brown property, as detailed in the staff report. The city participated in good faith discussions with the current property owner, Donna I. Brown, and has arrived at mutually agreeable terms. The property was previously owned by City of Dublin employee Tammy L. Brown, who passed away on July 24th, 2021. Tammy worked in the public service, development, and economic development divisions during a career that spanned 34 years with the city. In memory and honor of Tammy, Donna Brown, Tammy's mother, wishes to donate the property interest for the project at no cost to the city. This ordinance authorizes the city manager to execute all necessary conveyance documents and contracts to formally acquire the necessary property interests. Mrs. Brown wishes to also transfer the property to a family member prior to the end of the year. Therefore, staff is recommending this ordinance be passed as emergency legislation since there is no public expenditure of funds involved. Staff recommends adoption of this ordinance at the first reading this evening as an emergency to comply with the time constraints set forth by the grantor to allow the property interest and a transfer of the ownership of the property to occur prior to the end of 2021. I'll be glad to answer any questions from council. And again, this is parcel 7 on your location map on the screen.
Very good, thank you. Want to take a moment for public comment? Is there anyone present that would like to speak relative to this legislation? Hearing none, council questions, discussion? I would just like to point out that this is being treated as an emergency, but there is no transfer of funds that are happening, so there is not a financial impact on any resident of the community. And certainly it is moving that Mrs. Brown would want to donate this in her daughter's name, who was a beloved member of our staff. And hopefully we'll have some way in the future to honor her in this path, in this space, as it comes to fruition. So certainly do appreciate that. I will make a motion to waive second reading, public hearing, and consider this ordinance as an emergency legislation. Is there a second? And we will first vote on the motion, and then we will vote on the ordinance. Jenny, please call the roll.
Ms. Aludo? Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes, and the roll on the ordinance.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo? Yes. Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Introduction, public hearing, vote on resolution 74-21.
Affirming support that funds distributed to the city and deposited into the Coronavirus Relief Fund, Fund 265, have been expended by the city only for costs permitted under the Federal Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act.
And we will go back to Mr. Stifler for the staff report.
Thank you, members of council. This ordinance is very similar to the this resolution is very similar to the resolution that was passed last year regarding these coronavirus relief funds. The purpose of this ordinance is really to demonstrate to the auditors, council's explicit approval of the utilization of these funds, reducing the audit risk associated with these funds. So these funds had a planned utilization in 2020. We encumbered, but we're not able to execute on all of the encumbrances by year end. So the remainder of just a little over 300,000 was expended this year. And this authorizes, or really acknowledges rather than authorizes, these expenditures.
Very good, thank you. Want to take a moment for public comment? Is there anyone present this evening that would like to speak relative to this legislation? Hearing none. Council, questions, discussion?
You know, I'd just like to mention that $60,000 that was given for economic support. You know, I sit on the board for Dublin Bridges, and on the board is also Welcome Warehouse, now Dublin One, and the Dublin Food Pantry. And they want to extend, as well as Dublin Bridges, their appreciation for that help from the city. And with those CARES dollars, it affected so many people. And they say they continue to be asked frequently. COVID isn't over for so many people here in Dublin. And so my hope is that with other dollars that come our way, that we would consider another round of economic help for those folks, because they really impact the lives of our community residents. And they're very appreciative, and they wanted me to make sure that I extended that thank you to the city and to everyone who offered that help. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. And I want to extend my appreciation back to those organizations. They provided excellent documentation, which is really the highest form of appreciation that a finance department can acknowledge. Also, I intend to bring you back early in Q1 of next year some options regarding the American Rescue Plan funding, because I know there is a need, and until we make decisions, we can't begin to address that need. So that's top of my priority list.
Nothing touches you more than a really well-designed and communicate spreadsheet, right? Well, Matt, I know I speak for all of us. We really appreciate the way that you're keeping track of these dollars and making sure that the appropriate accounts are set up and that the accounting is very clean. So we certainly appreciate that from you and your team. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo? Mr. Peterson? Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Resolution 75-21, we'll go back to Mr. Hammersmith.
Accepting the lowest and best bid for the Bright Road 12-inch water main extension project.
Paul?
Water main project, extension project. This project will construct new 12-inch water main between the roundabout at Emerald Parkway and Bright Road and the existing water main located along the south side of Bright Road near 3892 Inverness Circle. On November 18th, 2021, 5 bids were received, and the lowest and best bid received was submitted by Strauser Paving Company in the amount of $142,905. Work is expected to commence in the spring of 2022, and this project is to be completed by May 14th of 2022. Staff recommends council approval of this resolution, accepting the bid from Strauser Paving Company Incorporated in the amount of $142,905. I'll do my best to answer any questions from council, and I do have a location map for you on the screen.
Very good. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak relative to this legislation? Hearing none, council questions, discussion? Paul, I just have one. There was a revision on this project from its original bid of nearly $200,000. Was there substantive changes to the design?
No, it was just a competitive bid, and they were 28.4% lower than that estimate, but all we can say is that the contractor saw that they had efficiencies in performing this project.
Great, thank you so much. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Ms. Oludo?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner? Yes. Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Okay, this brings us to the other business portion of our agenda, and we have a staff report relative to the Delaware County Regional Planning Commission appointment. Jenny.
Hello again. So this evening, we are requesting council's appointment of a municipal member and alternate member to the Delaware Regional Planning Commission. We are recommending council's approval or appointment of Sarah Holt, who is newly hired within the planning department to be our municipal member, and then Tammy Noble will remain the alternate member to that commission, excuse me. So both Tammy and Sarah both have extensive planning background, particularly in the county level, so they will be do very well in these positions, and we are requesting council's appointment of them to this evening.
Great, thank you. Council questions, discussion? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to appoint Sarah Holt as a municipal member of the Delaware Regional Planning Commission and Tammy Noble as the alternative. Thank you. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Oludo?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to staff comments. General.
Good evening, members of council. Thank you. I'm going to ask Colleen Gilger to make her way up to the podium here while I make a couple comments on another topic. So I want to say, since this is our last meeting of the year, last council meeting, I just want to congratulate council and staff on what I think has been a pretty successful 2021. It hasn't been without its challenges, the ongoing pandemic and trying to recover the economic crisis and so forth. But, you know, I do think we were highly productive this year. I want to thank council for your leadership. I want to thank you for your partnership and your guidance through 2021. I think we've done a lot to set good conditions going into 2022. So this is not to be the state of the city. We'll do that in March. I think March 10th, I think is the date that we're focused on. So you might want to mark that on your calendar. But I do think we're ending this year on a really high note. And so as you're aware, Colleen, and after 23 years of service with the city, or she's in her 23rd year of service, is leaving us to join the Ohio State University to do economic development. I don't know what kind of economic development they do down there. It's more exciting than us, but we're okay with that. Not really okay with that, but that's the way it's going to be. So we'll have to live with it. But we hate to see her departure. But you know, she's done a terrific job in this role in economic development as an administrator and then a director of economic development. She's done a great job in leading her team. I mean, as you all know, she has attracted, retained, expanded, created thousands of jobs here in the city of Dublin. She has a pulse on all things real estate. She has a great rapport with our business community, which has taken years to develop, and she's done a great job of that. You can't get by with much that she doesn't already know in this arena, and she's just done a terrific job. Needless to say, she's a leader regionally and statewide in what she does in economic development, so we're very proud of her for that. So we're going to celebrate her on Tuesday, December 14th at 2:30 p.m. in the DCRC Talas, so I'll ask that you please come by and join staff in celebrating her service with the city. And I just want to publicly thank you, Colleen, for all that you've done. So, and we'll get you again next week. So, all right. Well, I made her stay around so I could say that. So, also, while I've got the mic, I want to thank Councilmember Peterson for his service. I know this is your last meeting, sir, and we'll celebrate you as well on December 16th here at Council Chambers. But on behalf of staff, thanks for being such a great partner, a great mentor, good leader, great leader. Thanks for your partnership and your mentorship, and thanks for being a great boss, really. Pretty good guy to work for. Did a great job as mayor and of course as council member, so it was a real pleasure to work with him in that role as well. So we'll look forward to celebrating you as well on December 16th. And to say the least, thank you for the sacrifice that it takes to do this job. Thank you. That's all I've got.
Right. Well, Colleen, I know all of us so appreciate the work that you have done in this city, and your fingerprints are everywhere. So you may be down in Ohio State, but every time you pass through Dublin, you'll see your fingerprints all over the city. And if you were here 23 years, you must have started when you were 10. So, but we so appreciate the work you've done. And, the economic engine of this community is better because of the work that you've done. And for that, every resident of this community should be very grateful for your service. So thank you certainly from the bottom of our hearts, and I am sure my fellow council members would echo those same things. Yeah, Andy?
I guess when you win awards like Economic Director of State of Ohio, what do you expect, right? So good luck at the gravy train.
Colleen, we're just going to miss you. You brought so many interesting and fascinating things to the table, and Dana's right. Your fingerprints are all over the place. So I hope that you don't call Dublin anything but home forever, and we see a lot of you. So thank you so much.
Colleen, I decided I'd make Matt proud and do some math here. If you've been doing this for like 18 years, that's over 900 weeks of promoting this community, being a partner with our business partners and our business community. That is a tremendous amount of work, and always with enthusiasm and zest. And so not only did you do amazing work, you did it so well. And we're going to miss you, and we thank you very much, and all the best. We're watching.
The businesses and the economic resources you brought into this community and city made this city really what it really became and what it is. And you've taken a lot of taxpayers, as taxpayers, you've taken a lot of pressure off of us by bringing in all these businesses. And we're all going to be grateful for what you've done. And I got to say, they're lucky to have gotten you. So it's been fun working with you all these years.
So like Matt, I'm very excited when your numbers end up on our spreadsheets. So maybe you could do me this last solid and just put together a quick little spreadsheet that shows me exactly how much money you have brought into the city with every economic development agreement you've ever done. I'm kidding, I'm not really gonna ask you to do that, but that would be fascinating because I bet the number's massive. So thank you for, as Greg always says, being the tip of the spear, because it is truly what makes this community run. Ohio State is very lucky to get you, but I hope that you will never ever feel that you are a stranger here. This will always be your home.
Yeah, Colleen, I heard that the true story is when you heard this was going to be my last council meeting, as a show of support, you stormed into Dana's office with your resignation in hand and threw it on his desk, which I greatly appreciate.
And it's all true.
I know that that's the true story. But as Christina said, it is the financial health of this community is the tip of the spear. And for over 2 decades, you've been carrying that spear. So thank you for what you've done for this community. It is all our success flows from that. So thank you very much. We wish you the best down there at Ohio State.
Your first job, I'm sure, will be able to get Ohio State back into the playoffs. So no small task, but you're up for it. I'm sure you'll figure out a way to make that happen. Okay, council reports, committee reports, admin committee. Kathy?
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Community Development Committee, Mr. Reiner.
The Community Development Committee met on November 30th to continue the Metro Center visioning process. The Metro Center area is a part of the adopted Dublin Corporate Area Plan, which dated back from 2018, which recommends a repositioning of the City of Dublin's legacy office sites. The DCAP focused on creating a walkable, mixed-use environment, establishing a strategy to refresh the Franz Road streetscapes. The goal of the Metro visioning process is to build upon the future and refine the recommendations within the plan. Specifically, it is related to the Metro Center area. This vision would stimulate redevelopment for the Metro Center inner loop that reflects the recommendations of the plan and the changes since its adoption. The CDC members, Chris, Andy, and myself, 3 Metro Center property owners, and the Planning and Zoning Commission members served on the Metro Center Visioning Advisory Committee. The committee held 3 meetings to discuss the current conditions of the Metro Center, evaluating the potential themes for redefining the district's identity and envisioning the appropriate architectural character. As part of the initial workshop, the members affirmed the 4 pillars that support the DCAP vision: development, site improvements, mobility, and regulatory. The staff and the consulting team, which was Planning Net and EMHT, developed drafts, revisions to the DCAP and redevelopment concepts based on the feedback and input of the advisory committee. The committee unanimously recommends to the City Council to incorporate the following revisions into the City Dublin Corporate Area Plan. They are high-quality architecture that is unique for the district while maintaining a timeless character, promote a diversity of lifestyles offering different housing options for the community, encouraging a variety of building heights along Franz Road that makes statements from the district involving architecture, retain greenway connections that strengthen the city's network and extend the greenway outside the Metro Center, allow the urban style development that is complementary to the surrounding neighborhoods, and ensure appropriate transitions between districts and neighborhoods through building heights, massing, setbacks, etc. Staff will draft legislation to amend the Dublin Corporate Area Plan consistent with the CDC's recommendations and present an ordinance to City Council in early 2022. Is there other comments from the committee?
I think you covered it really well. That is a
Thank you.
summary of what happened. Thank you. Finance Committee, Ms. Ludo?
Yeah, thank you. So in your packet, you will see the bed tax grant recommendations from the committee. Just as a quick summary, we had over $288,000 in requests, which is the largest amount that we've ever had. We have a budget of $225,000, so we did have to give some requests a few haircuts. I really appreciated the committee's consideration. We always take a look at the requester's history, as well as their room night impact, and then impact and opportunities for Dublin residents as we think through our recommendation for those amounts. We also discussed, because we felt that it went very well this past year, in coming back and taking a look at any unspent funds or funds for events that may be canceled, so that if there is an opportunity to redistribute those funds, that we would be able to do so, given how large the request was this year. And that would be in that May and June timeframe through Finance Committee, which would then come back to all of council. So that all being said, I would like to move to approve the hotel motel grant recommendations as are in your packet.
I will second. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
And Mayor, I am proud to say that that was his last vote.
Wow. I'm going to make a motion or something now. Thank you, Finance Committee. I know that is I know that's a lot of work. So, Public Services, Jane? Great. Liaison reports, Jane, will stick with you. The Planning and Zoning Commission, Dublin Bridges, and Washington Township.
Okay. Planning and Zoning has a special meeting on, the commission agreed to on Wednesday, December 8th, to help kind of finalize all of these applications that are coming forward. And just of 7 applications, there's an informal review of Mount Carmel Hospital's concept plan, an informal review of a development on Cosgray Road that includes 160 units of single-family and 345 units of multi. And there is an informal review of the new mobility hub that will be positioned at the Dublin Community Rec Center. And then Planning and Zoning is still engaged in the conversation about residential design standards, which we have struggled with tonight, and hopefully we'll be able to come forward with some recommendations on that and get that wrapped up for conversation, or hopefully maybe a council work session on that sort of thing. As for Dublin Bridge, as I mentioned tonight, they're just asking the Welcome Warehouse, Dublin Food Pantry, and Dublin Bridges and other nonprofits that this holiday season, if the public is listening, to think about those nonprofits here in our community and get onto their websites, donate what you can, give what you can, and they will do the good work that you would like them to do. Thank you.
And thank you for your work on Denise King's retirement from Washington Township. So that was a pleasant evening, and you did a great job with. Okay, 33 Corridor, Kathy?
We meet this Friday, thank you.
Mr. Keeler, Logan, Union, Champaign County Regional Planning Commission, and the 33 Corridor Group?
Nothing to report.
Thank you, Mr. Reiner, Arts Council, Veterans Committee?
I think Janet did a really good, comprehensive job sort of covering all that this evening. Thank you.
Mr. Peterson, Board of Education? Okay. I have for the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, we're starting the attributable funds review process, so I think there'll be some Dublin projects that will make its way on there. So we'll be back with some information of what that might look like. With that, I will go to Council Roundtable, and I'll start with Andy.
So I'd like to start by thanking Tammy Brown and her family for their generous donation to the city and the greater good. Secondly, in our public comment section, I was tickled to hear what those folks had to say, and it's just further affirmation that we live in a great city. It's people like those that make it such a great city. And Greg, your last meeting, you're like E.F. Hutton. When you speak, people listen. Even if he doesn't turn his microphone on, which he's done once tonight. So maybe he's a little tired, but honestly, the general said mentor, leader, role model. Certainly look up to you, and we'll miss your wisdom, Greg.
Thanks, Andy.
It's my turn. Greg, when I first met you, I didn't know you. I called you up one day, said, let's have coffee. You were so easy to talk to. I don't know that the citizens realize that Greg can be so approachable, although elusive. One of the things that I remembered most about you was that you always listened, and you always cared about what I had to say. You didn't know me as just a citizen before I ever started. What I've come to understand about you is these leadership qualities, and that other people don't recognize in you. Gentleness, you're even-tempered, you're measured in what you say, you're always respectful, but you're bold when it comes time to make a decision. You have a frugality about you. When we ever talk about spending money, you're very sensitive to how our taxpayer dollars are spent, because you said we're going to have to answer to that. And I've come to understand that this has been so important to you, and we all say that we're prudent with tax dollars, but you always held the line every time. Humility. With your depth of knowledge and your experience, you could go around and puff up your chest, but you never do. What you do is that you mentor people, you help all of us be better, you give good advice, you listen, and you help us become better at what we do. Most of all, what the citizenry needs to know is that you can trust someone with more character. And the fact that you have the kind of motivation and attitude, just simply be a public servant. And you do that so very well. And I love the fact that you're always promoting the word collaborative. I mean, I've collected dollars after dollars over that. I read a little, in thinking about what I wanted to say to you tonight, I came across a quote that I think is absolutely perfect for you. Leadership is about making others better as a result of your presence and making sure that impact lasts in your absence. And that is the way it is with us for you. I feel like your being here made us all better. And when you leave this dais, that impact of your being here is going to last a very long time because you taught all of us how to be better at what we do. And I hope we own up to it. And I hope when you watch, you don't go, oh my God, really? Thanks, Greg, for all of the help that you've given us and all the mentorship and all of the time that you've spent and all the good work you've done.
Okay, Greg, now I got to tell you what I really think about you. You know, we could spend 30, 40, 50 minutes, and I think I can summarize it in, for me, 2 words, and that is you rock. You just rock at everything that you have done. And you know, it was interesting to me when I first got on council, it didn't take me long to realize that making the right decision was a whole lot harder than you ever made it look like it was. And that, I'm going to get emotional, so that I thank you for. One of the things that I can say is that your leadership and your actions have made me think about 2 things that you said a lot as a mayor, and that is you would use the phrase upon reflection and let's consider our options. And I think those are really important pillars that as we think about how to make very difficult decisions upon reflection and let's consider options. And I think about them now, and I thank you for that, Greg, and we'll continue to do that. The other foundation is, well, that may be something for our heads to think about, was our hearts. And I cannot think, upon reflection, of a single meeting at the end of that meeting where you didn't take some time to thank somebody. Rather, that was a staff member, rather, that was a member of the community. But without fail, you took the time to say thank you. And that is something that we all have to remember to do. And you just did it so incredibly well. So I'd like to take that opportunity tonight to say that to you. Thank you, Greg, for all that you have done. And as Jane said, you've made a lasting impression, and we're going to miss you. You rock, our friend. And I don't know what you're going to do on Monday nights other than watch us, and so we'll be waving at you because we kind of know that's what you're going to do. She says with a little bit of envy, enjoy your Monday nights, and thank you.
Well, Greg, I first met Greg in 1998, and he looked pretty much the same, actually. You haven't aged much. And he was a young fellow, and it was 98 to 2002 that he served. And back then, I sort of kept a running list of what I thought most ethical votes were happening in the city by the different city council people, and who stood up and voted correctly for the common good of this community. And I got to say, it was you, Greg. You were the guy that I think put your heart into the community, and you know, it was an amazing 4 years, his first 4 years, and then we had the next 8 years together. And I guess I just want to focus on the Bridge Street part of it, because that was such a difficult time to take the city and try to jump into something new, a new adventure. And we had wonderful staff support from our legal department, from Angel, and it was a high-risk adventure. I mean, to take and build a community like that and say, we're going to draw people up from downtown where there's ball diamonds and other things for these young people, and we needed those IT people in our community up here to help feed them into our businesses. And we sort of felt a slacking going on at that time period. And we said, we got to create a whole new world up here. And this can't be just a bedroom community of single-family houses. And that took such foresight, imagination, and courage, because it could have failed, and it would have been been around your neck and the necks of the other city council people. But that visionary leadership, ability to take high risks, attention to detail, and you always had that attention to detail no matter what we were discussing in the back room, and it was always appreciated. We can see why you're a successful attorney, and you have all our respect, and you advance this city greatly. So thank you for everything you've done.
Thanks. So as the only introvert up here, I'll keep this short. As a resident, I thank you for your leadership and for the vision that you have helped create for the city. As a fellow council person, I thank you for helping me. I got on council 6 years ago, and it was a challenge. And you were always there every time I called you, every time I had a question. And I appreciate that. And that's not always easy for me because I am an introvert. And I always appreciated how you'd pull me along when maybe sometimes I didn't want to go. And as a friend, I thank you additionally for the time that you spent in getting to know me and getting to know all of the council people here. And as somebody just to work with, you always appreciate the staff. And, I'm not sure that anyone who lives in this city really gets how much you've done for the city and for everyone around you. And so I just want to let you know how much I appreciate all aspects of what it takes to be up here. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm not going to look at you. The lessons you've taught me, I couldn't begin to describe. I frequently joke about them, although they're not really funny. That I can only choose from the options available to me. That, do the right thing at the right time, right now. Just so many meaningful things. When I first came on council, it was a very uncomfortable place to be. And being the two very highbrow people that we were, you called me up and you said, let's go have coffee. So we went to McDonald's.
And you refused to drink coffee.
Yes, I did. Yes, that's not my strong suit. Sat at a booth in the back, and you were so welcoming into a really difficult situation for me to walk into. And I really feel like at that time, you were like a big brother to me, and you were going to look out for me, and you were going to have my back. That held true for 4 years and beyond, but for certainly those 4 years, I can't tell you how much I appreciate how much you cared for me. You looked after me, you taught me, you were patient. It really changed who I am, and I really appreciate that. We were at a St. Patrick's Day luncheon, and you were up and you were giving the welcome and introducing the Grand Leprechaun. And I happened to be sitting next to my mom, and you were witty and you were funny. And my mom leans over to me and she says, I pity the fool that has to follow being married to Greg Peterson. You certainly are an amazing act to try to follow. What you do with excellence is beyond words. I've never had a Thanksgiving that you didn't text me first and tell me that you were thankful. I'm not real proud of that, but it's true. But you have been such a profound leader and teacher to all of us. Your wisdom in that room over there will be incredibly missed. And I love you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. But, first I'd like to, Annie, my dad used to say that sometimes the fewer words you use, the more you say. So I'll try to continue to follow that advice now. I'd like to thank my wife, Sunny, and my kids, Zach and Tatum. We all know, all of you in this room up here, you know they're the ones that make the sacrifice. You know, they're the ones that have to look at the empty seat at the dining room table and the empty bleachers at the baseball game and the choir concert. So they're the ones that really make the sacrifice for us to do this work, and it is very, very important work in all of our families. I guess I would just say thank you to them on your behalf. To our staff, over the years, Dana, you think about the folks you've got in this room. They are truly extraordinary. And you think back on the people that they have replaced over the years. You know, you see Chief over there, and he's following Hines. And you see Matt, and we all knew Angel. And you go through the list of people that made this community what it is, and it really is. It's not difficult when you look at it that way, when you break it down and you look at it brick by brick, why this is such an extraordinary place, person by person. And the people from Tim Hansley and Ann and Nancy Richardson. I mean, oh my God, the number of hours, Mayor, when we were, you know, on the other side of the world, that Nancy was still taking care of us. And at the end of the day, they are just your staff, Dana, and the ones that came before them. They're just such fundamentally good people. And it's not just, you know, the heads and the people that we interact with more here, but it's the boots on the ground. It's the people that are really running this community that we don't necessarily see every day. And they're such good people that it's not hard to figure out. That's the secret sauce about what makes Dublin what it is. To my fellow council members, you know, over I just can't even believe it. My legal career is now, I'm approaching 30 years. And I look back and I'm just astounded at the different places I've gotten to go and the people that I've been around and the groups that I have been associated with. And I can say to each of you, there is not a group I have ever been more proud to be a part of than to serve on this council with you 6 people. Your talents, your dedication, your commitment to this community, to what's good for this community, oftentimes to your own sacrifice, and your passion to do the right thing for the people that live in this community. There is not a group of people that I have been more proud to serve with than you. So I very much appreciate that. And you think back on that, I mean, John, you know, all the council members we've gone through over the years, you know, and that Mike and Rick and Tim and Amy and Bob and Chuck McCash, Tom McCash and Kathy Boring, Marilee, you know, you can just go on. I remember Cindy Hyde-Petaluga that we served with, geez, it seems like a lifetime ago. The people that have put their blood, sweat, and tears into this community that make it what it is. It's not difficult to figure out why it works. It's the people that are here. And so I started off, I was 29 years old. I didn't have any kids. Sonny and I were married. We didn't have kids. Had both my parents. I lost both my parents while I've been serving here. The world looked a little bit different, but so the last group of people that I guess I would like to thank and express my appreciation to is this community. You know, when you sit down at that kitchen table and you decide you're going to run for city council and you get out those petitions and you start circulating those petitions and you figure out, you know, how to get out and interact with the community, it is an unbelievably humbling thing to be elected by your community to represent them. And in large measure, the people that we represent aren't very loud about it. You know, they're the people that are just raising their kids. You know, they're cutting the grass and they're going to work every day, and they want us to do the right thing and to be to be given the honor and the privilege to sit here and to represent them is an overwhelmingly humbling experience. And so I greatly appreciate this community putting me in this chair a few different times. And we can all think about people in the community that are extraordinary. And, you know, you think of the Mac Park Hills and the Jerry Kosickis who took time out of his busy evening to send in a comment about me. I mean, that's a very humbling thing. So it's a wonderful, wonderful community. And I think what really makes it truly magical here in Dublin, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how old you are when you get here. It doesn't matter when you get here. It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter where your journey took you before you got here. When you get to Dublin, Dublin is your hometown. And that's what the people got up and testified about earlier. And Dublin you become part of Dublin, and it becomes a part of you. And there's that Kenny Chesney song about if I could write a letter to me, if I could talk to that kid who was 29 years old, my mom used to say, it's a beautiful life. And it has been I have had a beautiful life, and serving this community and having the privilege to sit here and work with all of you folks and work with you guys, that is what has added the beauty of my life. And it has become a part of me. And, after Sonny and I had kids, the most important thing to us, my most important goal was to provide my kids the best childhood I could. And it is because of all you folks that they have a hometown they can be proud of and a community they can be proud of. So maybe I used too many words tonight, Andy, I don't know. But thank you very much. I am terrifically appreciative and blessed to have ever been associated with you people. And I will always be very, very proud to have been a part of this team. So, thanks.
We are adjourned.